Hey guys, let's get more news about Miami Heat, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Ira Winderman, organizational reset, Jimmy Butler, and the need to take a deep breath. It has been a month now since the Miami Heat headed onto the unknown after their humbling, season-ending 118-84 loss to the Boston Celtics at TD Garden. In the moment, it was arguably the lowest of low points for the franchise since being swept out of the first round of the 2021 playoffs by the Milwaukee Bucks. A week later, Pat Riley did not sugarcoat in his season-ending comments, the Heat president essentially challenging his leaders to show up for such moments of truth. In the immediate wake of both the loss in the Celtics building and amid Riley's comments at the Heat's arena, there was a sense of an impending organizational reset. Not tanking, mind you, because the Heat insist they do not tank, and because when 2 of your next 4 first-round picks are headed elsewhere, that door already has been slammed shut, anyway. But of a dramatic shift to the approach of these past 5 years. As in the Jimmy Butler years. In this ensuing month, Butler has been speculated from Philadelphia to Golden State, mostly because of an impending window for a contract extension that opens next month. As the playoff field thins, such is the way of conjecture, 28 teams no longer concerned about the immediacy of XS and OS. In a way, perhaps it is better that Riley vented on May 6, that his words were allowed to resonate before the Heat necessarily had to or have to act. In some ways, it was as if Riley was issuing a challenge to Butler similar to the one he issued to LeBron James in June 2014, when the Heat had just failed against the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals and James was about to enter his free agency window. The difference is Riley's comments that year came just a week before the draft, 2 weeks before free agency. So Shabazz Napier was added in the draft in a bid to appease LeBron, the UConn point guard who previously had been mentioned as James' preferred choice at the position. A week later, the Heat reached free agency agreements with Josh McRoberts and Danny Granger, in an attempt to show LeBron that the roster that had struggled against the Spurs could quickly be rebooted. It all was knee-jerk and counterproductive, with LeBron nonetheless leaving. In the current scenario with Butler, there has been time for both exhorting and exhaling. Since Riley's comments, there has not been a Heat personnel move, even with the NBA reopening the trade window as soon as a team's season is over. Yes, there has been plenty of presumption, publicly and otherwise, from all sides about what might happen next. Ultimately, though, this is not the LeBron James situation. Jimmy Butler is under Heat contract for next season, with a player option for the following season. If Butler is to walk, it would be July 2025, not in a matter of weeks or days. Which brings it back to organizational reset, and where the Heat ultimately should be headed. And that should come down to whether the Heat believe the current mix either is good enough now or can get good enough, particularly with a full season of Terry Rozier, instead of just 31 games. Whether another team would be willing to offer Butler a maximum extension this summer should be moot in the mind of Riley, Andy Ellisberg and the Arisons. Whether Butler might act out in the void of such an extension also should be moot. If anything, it could instead put him in contract year mode. The only factor, for a team that has shown it solely lives in the moment, is whether it would be better now by dealing its leading man. A month ago, as their season careened to a close, the Heat showed they needed more Butler. Days later, Riley said this current Heat mix has to get more from Butler. In the wake of Riley's comments, the debate over more money for Butler became the talking point. All of that resonated, but what wholly should matter is whether the Heat have an immediate window to become better without Jimmy Butler. Or not. Which is why these 2 intervening months before any potential movement matters, with air that needs to be cleared. Nick Starr admits Jimmy Butler and Erik Spoelstra lived rent-free in his head all of last summer. The Miami Heat have a way of getting inside the heads of their opponents, and it looks like that's exactly what happened with New York Knicks star Josh Hart. Hart and fellow Knicks teammate Jalen Brunson were looking back on their 2023-24 NBA season, and Hart let it slip that he had the Heat on his mind for much of the offseason leading up to the campaign. "I thought about Miami all summer," Hart said. "I was thinking about SPO, Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry. That's all I thought about last summer." Of course, Hart is referencing the fact that the Heat defeated the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals last season. As fans will remember well, the Heat entered the playoff bracket as a play-in team. They then did what few thought was possible and advanced all the way through the bracket and into the 2023 NBA Finals. Unfortunately for Spoelstra, Butler, Lowry and the rest of the Heat roster, the Cinderella run ended there when they faced off against the buzzsaw that was the eventual NBA champion Denver Nuggets. This season, the Heat had much different luck in the playoffs. Like last season, they entered the playoffs after winning in the play-in tournament. However, that's where the similarities ceased. The Heat were severely undermanned in the playoffs, playing their first-round series without key contributors such as Butler and guard Terry Rozier. Despite that, they still managed to steal one win from the Boston Celtics in Game 2. That's where the fun ended for Heat fans, though, and the Celtics won the following 3 games to close out the series in 5 games. Now, the Heat enter an offseason that is filled with uncertainty. It is known that Butler is seeking a maximum 2-year extension on his deal. It is not known if the Heat are planning on fulfilling that wish. That could certainly lead to Butler heading elsewhere to continue his NBA career, and reports are indicating that is a possibility. Butler's departure would mark an end of an era of Heat basketball that has been both incredibly rewarding and slightly disappointing. Since joining the Heat, Butler has made promises about winning a title. The Heat have won the East twice since his arrival in Miami, but have failed to deliver on that ultimate goal. In the next few months, Heat fans will likely find out if Butler's title chase in Miami is over or if he still has more time to make good on that promise. Trade proposal sends John Collins to Heat, Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin to Jazz. One NBA analyst proposed that the Miami Heat and Utah Jazz make a trade with each other this offseason. Zach Buckley of Bleacher Report proposed the following trade idea between the Heat and Jazz. The trade: the Utah Jazz trade John Collins, the number 29 pick and the number 32 pick to the Miami Heat for Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin. The Jazz are open to trading Collins after just 1 season. Meanwhile, the Heat are expected to be aggressive on the trade market this offseason. Utah should be, and probably is, seeking out alternatives, and this would be an intriguing one. Maybe a late first-round pick and early second-rounder feels a bit rich for a pair of role players, but this Jazz roster doesn't need 3 more rookies, Buckley wrote. What it could use is more shooting and better two-way play on the wing, and this package checks both boxes. Robinson is an elite outside shooter who just averaged more than 2.5 triples on 37+% shooting for the 4th time in 5 seasons. He's overpaid, but so is Collins, so the Jazz might opt for the cleaner fit. Especially if it meant getting Martin, a relentless worker on both ends who's shown flashes of high-end shot-making. Martin would have to pick up his below-market $7.1 million player option for this deal to work, but maybe he'd do so with the promise of getting a long-term extension down the road. The Jazz missed the playoffs this year, while the Heat lost in the first round to the Boston Celtics. Collins averaged 15.1 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.1 assists for the Jazz this season while shooting 53.2% from the field, 37.1% from beyond the arc and 79.5% from the free throw line. He'll make $26.6 million next season. One of the top shooters in the NBA, Robinson averaged 12.9 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2.8 assists for the Heat while shooting 45% from the field, 39.5% from 3, and 88.9% from the foul line. He'll make $19.4 million in 2024-25. Martin averaged 10.0 points, 4.4 rebounds and 2.2 assists while shooting 43.1% overall, 34.9% from deep and 77.8% from the free throw line. He has a player option worth $7.1 million for next season. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of John Collins? Leave your opinion in the comments.